Welcome back. Let's talk about Easter and how we're going to deal with it this year. And I'm joined by Peter Kurti, who's with the Centre for Independent Studies. He's also an Anglican minister. Thanks for joining us again, Peter. This is a really difficult time for people involved in their churches around the country. They would have been at church last night in many cases for an Easter vigil. There will be services on Good Friday as well, often the Stations of the Cross and the like. And, of course, the big focus on Easter Sunday, where all sorts of church communities would come together as a group. How are they dealing with it this year?
Well, you're right. It's been a big challenge for churches around the country and indeed around the world. And what a lot of parish priests have done is put their services online. They've pre-recorded some services and put those up on social media, or they've live streamed and people can click and join a service remotely. And that's been one imaginative way of trying to address this most unusual of Easters. I think the challenge for members of the congregation, though, is that they're not able to come together, as you said. And so that time of fellowship that we experience, that time of coming together and worshipping together and sharing a common life, becomes very hard. And I think what the churches in this country are trying to do is to recreate some form of experience of a common life, even though clearly it's not what we expect and not what we're used to, and probably not what we need, but it's the best that we can do. Yeah. And I think churches are actually doing quite well in this country. A bit of a spat has broken out in England, which you may have come across, where the churches have been closed, and not just as they have been closed here, but the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has forbidden his clergy to go into churches. And that's caused a bit of a storm, whereas our clergy, certainly in the Anglican Church, have been able to go into church and have been able to record services there. But it's a tough time for everybody.
Yeah, we spoke last night to the Bishop of Townsville, a Catholic bishop there, and he spoke via Skype, and he was going to be streaming an Easter Vigil Mass from the church. He was going to be there on his own, and people could watch it online. Do you have any sense from various congregations around the country whether many people are actually logging on and looking at services online?
Well, one of the major parishes here in Sydney, Christchurch St Lawrence, says that they had 11,000 hits on their social media sites as people tuned in to watch services, which is quite phenomenal. I mean, you've got to think, what if 11,000 people turn up for church? That would be an interesting problem to have to deal with. But increasingly, I think people are recording services or broadcasting services in that way. I was down in Tasmania recently and talking to the Roman Catholic Archbishop there, Julian Porteous, who was going to do exactly what the Bishop in Townsville has done, record services as if there was a congregation there, but the cathedral would be empty. Very unusual experience for clergy, of course, who are used to standing in front of a real body of people and used to dealing and communicating directly with them.
Well, I'm going to show you just a clip here of a bishop who's become fairly famous. His name is Bishop Michael Curry, and of course he spoke at the royal wedding last year. He's a bishop of the Episcopal Church in the US. He'll be delivering services online over this Easter. Have a look at how he became famous around the world.
Two young people fell in love, and we all showed up. And Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. This is the first and great commandment." My brother, my sister, God love you. God bless you. And may God hold us all in those almighty hands of love.
There he is, Bishop Michael Curry. He certainly shook that wedding ceremony up. We're joined by Kel Richards as well. Now, thanks for joining us, Kel. We're just talking about these online services, and the reason I showed Bishop Michael Curry is because he'll be giving Easter services online. No doubt people right around the world will be clicking onto his service, given the attention that he's drawn to himself of late. How do you think this is going down, online religion in Australia in the time of coronavirus?
I think it's brilliant. I think this is a golden opportunity for all of those people, perhaps even you, gentle viewer, who would never darken the doorway of a church, who have been to church for years or maybe never been, and they'd feel too awkward or too uncomfortable to go to church. This is a golden opportunity to rediscover the foundations of our civilization in the Christian faith. I'll tell you how to do it. The simple way, because you won't know how to log on to online services, go to YouTube, type in Easter sermons and look for an Easter sermon and have a look and think, yes, those are the values our society, our world is built on. In fact, I'll give you the names of two preachers, okay? Because you can then look for these guys under Easter sermons. One is Timothy Keller, Keller. He's in New York, so he's right in the heart of all of this. Timothy Keller, Keller, look for him. The other's a bloke named John Piper, Piper. Both of them brilliant. They're great preachers. They tell great stories. You will understand it. You'll follow it really well. And this is the golden opportunity you've got to rediscover what it is you've been missing out when you rushed off for a long weekend every other Easter.
Absolutely. You silly people, you've been out camping and having fun. You should have been staying home, going to church, and now you can do it online. Well, let's talk about the religious aspect of this, Peter. Tell us about the message of Easter. Of course, it's about suffering, but it's about resurrection and rebirth, and it could hardly be a more apt message for our current crisis.
Well, you're right. It's a very timely message. The message of Easter is that out of what seemed like chaos and a pointless and cruel death, God brought meaning and hope and a new and a sense of justice to humankind. So in Easter we see the world turned, or on Good Friday we see the world turned upside down when we remember the day that Jesus was crucified. But then Easter itself is a celebration of new life, of resurrection, of that chaos being turned into order, of hate being turned into love, and defeat being turned into triumph. And so it's a very important message for Christians, and an important message that Christians want to share with other people around the world, because it's about God having, not in the sense of having control, that God can control everything, but God has, God is never absent in any of the experiences of human life, and that there is meaning where we fear there is no meaning. And that's the great hope of Easter. That's the great Christian message of Easter.
Kel, in your experience, of course, none of us have experienced the coronavirus pandemic before, but in times of great uncertainty and perhaps fear and worry, do people turn more to religion, or do they perhaps get their back up about religion?
You get a bit of both, but in fact, for a whole lot of people, you know the old saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. I remember hearing Billy Graham many years ago when I was much younger, and Billy started by saying, the first thing I'm going to say, and the thing I want you to remember and take away from this is, God loves you. Now, the power in that is just enormous. And that's what Easter does. If I had to sum up the message of Easter in one word, the word would be forgiveness. And the first Easter is God stepping into the pages of human history saying, I'm going to show you how much I love you and how I can forgive you. Now, that's enormous. That's powerful. And in a time of pandemic, that's a message we need to hear.
Well, just to test your ecumenical skills, I suppose, Kel, tell us about Passover and what that means this same weekend for members of the Jewish faith in this country.
Well, of course, Passover is the meal that Jesus celebrated with his followers, his first followers, immediately before he was crucified and then conquered death and rose from the dead. So it is important because Christianity grows out of the Jewish faith recorded in the Old Testament. And that Passover meal they shared together is in a sense continued and reflected in the communion service that Christians still celebrate to this day. So it's a seamless fabric, if you like.
Peter and Kel, thanks so much both for joining us and having that discussion about Easter, and I hope you both have a happy and holy Easter.
Have a wonderful
Thanks,
Easter.
Chris. And to you. Thanks.